On the streets of Ireland's cities, Dublin, Cork, Galway and beyond, an unsettling scene has become all too familiar. Tattered figures crouch at pedestrian crossings, their hands outstretched for coins. To the casual observer, these are the urban poor or desperate souls in need. But hidden in their ragged pleas for help lies a darker truth. An organized crime network has woven its way into Ireland's begging culture. Investigative reports reveal that elements of Romanian organized crime have been systematically trafficking vulnerable people into Ireland, turning begging and exploitation into a transnational business. We begin by setting the scene. In a world of shadows and desperation, where everyday citizens are asked for charity, who is really pulling the strings? On an autumn evening in Dublin, the city's bustling centre looks no different than any other night. Yet, according to Garda Commissioner Drew Harris, a clandestine operation lurks behind some of these sites. At a 2024 anti-trafficking conference in Cork, Harris delivered a blunt warning. Cross-border traffickers were bringing victims to Ireland, predominantly in the sex industry, but also in forced begging, even mutilating their limbs to enforce compliance. "We do see a lot of begging in Ireland," Harris said, "and we have to be aware of that, and that it could be part of an organized crime group engaged in it and exploiting people through begging. In the dim streetlight, every outstretched cup or crutch could be a pawn of this gritty underworld." This investigation follows those threads. We trace a story that begins in Eastern Europe and winds through Ireland's towns and cities, exposing how a so-called begging economy has enriched criminal figures. Along the way, we meet Garda officers piecing together evidence, business owners expressing alarm, and even judges questioning how Ireland's streets came to be so crowded. From Dublin's Millennium Walkway to the laneways of Cork's city centre, we gather the true accounts behind sensational tabloid tales. What emerges is an unsettling pattern: ruthless gangs recruiting children and adults alike for forced begging, weaving long-suffering victims into a network of fear and profit. Long before the recent headlines, Irish society first glimpsed this phenomenon a decade earlier. In January 2007, after Romania and Bulgaria joined the EU, hundreds of Roma families arrived in Dublin. Many set up a makeshift camp on the M50 roundabout, claiming refuge and asylum. Irish media immediately raised suspicions. Commentators warned that Eastern European crime bosses involved in human trafficking planned to send thousands of Roma gypsies into Ireland, ultimately funneling welfare handouts back to shadowy bosses abroad. Gardaí moved quickly. They evicted the encampment and served deportation orders, blocking further influx. Behind the scenes, officers and Romanian police exchanged information. Rumors circulated that Roma families were being used by criminal networks. The Garda National Immigration Bureau reported tracking multiple women taken by cars and coaches from the site to beg, while men from the camp were linked to shoplifting and snatchings. One elder was watched deposit via Western Union, believed to be money sent back to Romania on behalf of traffickers. One figure at that time loomed largest in the Irish press, a Romanian named Baron Rostas. He was the self-styled voice of the Ballymun encampment, claiming to represent marginalized Roma. But Irish investigations later painted a very different picture. A 2013 Sunday World expose described Rostas as the face of a high-profile sit-in, and simultaneously the mastermind of a large-scale begging operation enriching a criminal family from its proceeds. Investigators alleged that Rostas and his son were wiring tens of thousands of euro to Romania, building castles while literally forcing women and children to beg on Irish streets. Under Rostas's direction, lieutenants reportedly marched groups of Roma daily into Dublin's centre, tracking their begging quotas by planting marked notes in their bowls. This ruthless system even involved children, girls as young as 7 and infants carried to tug at the heartstrings of passers-by. From the vantage of 2025, it is hard to overstate how shocking those revelations were. Newspapers spoke of Gypsy King Rostas living in luxury villas in Romania, while hundreds of helpless Romas worked in squalor for his profit. Baron Rostas himself was deported in 2007, only to quietly return and resume his activities. His protégé openly targeted Irish pedestrians at ATMs and parking kiosks, tactics guaranteed to intimidate and extract cash. Eventually, Garda raided Rostas's Dublin safe houses, even seizing large cash stashes about to be sent home. By 2013, Rostas was a household name in Ireland's crime news, an archetype of the ruthless boss of a begging gang. While the Rostas saga is extraordinary, Garda intelligence had already noted a wider problem by that time. In late 2011, the Herald, Irish Independent, reported on a massive Garda operation against Roma begging gangs in Dublin. That crackdown seized $7,000 in cash, led to 540 arrests in a single year, and identified some 30 addresses in Dublin and Kildare used to organise begging. Inspector Patrick McMenamin told the press that the evidence suggested organised begging is confined to family units of Roma. The Garda operation found children being used as aggressive beggars in all weather, a lucrative economy run by ruthless ringleaders. 10 years ago, the pieces were already being assembled. Romania-born families, child beggars in city streets, and cash flows traced back across the water. This era also saw legislative action. In 2008, the Irish government overhauled its old vagrancy laws, targeting the most exploitative forms of begging. New offences were created to prevent adults using children for begging, to criminalise harassing, so-called Fagin-type, beggars, and to force police compliance with move-on orders. By 2011, the Criminal Justice Public Order Act had become law, explicitly acknowledging that sending children to beg should be a crime. But despite tougher laws, the Garda warned that beggars would remain as long as citizens gave them money. The message was clear. Ireland was trying to fight back, but the battle line had shifted from antiquated charity to modern organised crime. As the 2010s progressed, evidence of organised begging surfaced outside Dublin too. In Cork City by late 2014, traders were reporting an invasion of Romanian beggars flooding the streets. One fishmonger with the Cork Business Association told a newspaper that up to 16 people were involved in what looked like a rotating begging crew. One set is begging, then others collecting from them, he said, estimating the group earned $120 to $150 each, 2 to 3 times per day. These were not isolated homeless individuals. To local business owners, it felt like a coordinated operation. At a December 2017 council meeting, Chief Superintendent Barry McPolin confirmed their suspicions. Garda had uncovered flight tickets from Bucharest in the hands of arrested Cork beggars. One English market vendor remarked that the ring was so well organised it seemed flying in. Men and women from Romania just to beg in Cork. Indeed, McPolin told councillors he suspected a Romanian group is organising beggars in Cork, with members being flown in from Bucharest to Dublin and travelling to Leaside to beg. Prosecutors found invoices showing 6 people had booked the same flights to Dublin, all for the purpose of begging. A judge in Galway even asked at a hearing, "Are people being trafficked to do this?" noting that every time one beggar was jailed, another without any record simply took his place. Meanwhile, in Dublin, the begging scene was similarly alarming. In 2017, a survey by Dublin Town, a city business group, found that the majority of the begging in the city would be of an organised nature, their chair reported. Observers noted a constant rotation, one person on a street corner, another ready to take over. Dublin businesses often saw young Roma helpers collecting coins from their beggar associates, as if running a cash till for a street stall. Garda in the capital quietly confirmed they had traced some of these beggars back to foreign networks. In fact, a Garda superintendent in Galway later revealed that groups arrested in Roscommon or Galway often held return plane tickets to Romania, evidence suggesting they flew to Dublin to beg and would soon fly back. The Cork Echo, an independent local paper, covered a fresh wave of this activity in mid-2018. Up to 15 young people, believed to be from Romania, were begging in Cork City at once. They appeared to have recently flown in as part of an organised ring targeting Cork and other Irish cities. Social workers noted the group did not engage with local homeless services and often spoke no English. Clear signs they were not simply lost locals, but outsiders with a hidden agenda. In one Galway penny's doorway, mats and sleeping bags set aside by the gang were found in wheelie bins each morning, as if a local crew had provided support. Cork's Chief Supt McPolin again confirmed the scale. In one recent month alone, Garda had made almost 40 arrests for begging. The ring was not a fringe nuisance. It was substantial enough to clog courts and vex city councillors. Policing this was difficult. By law, begging itself is not an offence. Only obstruction is punishable. That means Garda must witness harassment or obstruction before charging someone. Frontline officers often found themselves outgunned by ring tactics. Once rounded up and charged, beggars would simply be replaced by another flight in from Romania. A Galway judge observed that while people could be fined a few €100 for aggressive begging, those fines were trivial compared to the profits seen by the gangs. They think they are quite clever, she remarked of the traffickers who rotate recruits through jail time. By late 2018, Ireland's key urban centres were reporting the same picture. Small bands of foreign nationals operating as beggars under the direction of unseen handlers. In Cork, the usual winter slowdown in street homelessness did not affect the ring. Even as local rough sleeper mats filled, the Romanian crew plied their trade regardless of weather. In Dublin, some ATM vestibules and pedestrian hotspots were ringed with Roma beggars alternating in shifts. All the while, buskers and genuine homeless people found their meagre appeal competing against an apparent syndicate expert at turning on the pity. Behind these street crews are human stories of exploitation. Victims themselves are often reluctant or afraid to come forward, either embarrassed or too terrified of retaliation by their controllers. But a few details emerged in court records and interviews. In Cork in 2017, for instance, Garda Sergeant Alan Cronin described how an arrested beggar was found with a group flight invoice. He had bought tickets for 5 other people as well. When questioned, he insisted the invoice was group discounted, without explanation, a transparent lie. Prosecutors believed that once he was detained, the gang had already arranged a new arrival to fill his spot. One of the most harrowing discoveries came from Ireland's northwest. In 2015, Garda busted a forced labour ring that had trafficked 6 Romanian boys into County Monaghan. The children, some as young as 14, were found living in squalor on a farm. They had been compelled to work up to 16 hours per day in a legitimate business front, a brewpub and a mechanic's garage, while receiving only a $5 daily food allowance. Letters from their employer described them as unpaid domestic helpers, but in reality they were held virtually as slaves. One brave victim managed to call the Romanian embassy in Dublin, alerting authorities. Inspectors described it as one of Ireland's worst cases of human trafficking. Detectives uncovered that the gang used the farm's mixed-use structure to launder profits from prostitution and cannabis cultivation, but it was the starved, abused boys who testified under protection. These children had been lured to Ireland, told they would earn money, and then kept in cramped trailers on a frozen plot of land. Garda Detective Inspector Pat O'Donnell noted the cruelty. "This is a form of modern slavery," he said of the ordeal. The ringleader fled before arrest, leaving 6 terrified teenagers to be placed in care. The case was a wake-up call. Beyond the beggar crews lurked other Romanian gangs trafficking people into forced labour across Ireland's rural border counties. The Migrant Rights Centre of Ireland warned that such forced labour was widespread throughout the country, especially in construction and hospitality. On the begging streets themselves, surveillance by undercover Garda and journalists has peeled back the mask. In Dublin, for example, one investigative report spent weeks observing a large house in North City where dozens of Roma children and adults lived. Each morning, groups of them set off together to beg downtown. At day's end, they dutifully filed back, emptying jars of coins into the boss's hands. The Rostas family story earlier documented how criminals plant marked notes in the beggar's collection. If those notes aren't returned, the beggar is flagged as a thief and beaten or replaced. Though Garda cannot be seen on every street corner, these patterns are well known. Children around 10-12 carrying cups on Clark's Bridge in Dublin, or a band of 5 begging together by the General Post Office suggest a handler's blueprint. One sobering detail: many of the beggars themselves seem oblivious to their exploitation. Some do not speak English at all, relying on gestures. Reports in Cork noted groups of 5 or 6, all in their 20s, who appeared well-fed, well-outfitted, clean clothes, shoes, and clearly not destitute, leading locals to suspect they were paid a fixed amount by the boss to beg aggressively for hours. When police interrogated suspects, some pretended not to understand Garda questions, forcing the provision of interpreters and delaying any case. Others quickly had calls dropped or stonewalled inquiries, a sign of organized counter-surveillance. Perhaps most chilling of all is the use of children as a sympathy tactic. Witness accounts and the Rostas expose describe small girls in princess dresses, clasping their babies or worn stuffed toys, while men lurk nearby, ready to pounce on coins. Garda sources have reported cases where a child's crutch was suspiciously modified in shape, suggesting it had been broken intentionally to elicit pity. Commissioner Harris's description of forced disfigurement of beggars can now be better understood as referencing these grotesque punishments to ensure victims never stray or disobey. Despite the danger, aid groups emphasize that these individuals deserve compassion. The problem is the criminal exploitation behind them. As Garda Butcher, PSNI, later urged, people should not confuse immigration with trafficking victims. When we see a child on the street, it might be a victim or a recruit in a criminal game, and reporting those instincts to police is now part of the message. By 2023, Ireland's struggle against these networks had connected to a broader international effort. The global chain operation, led by Europol and Interpol in 44 countries, targeted precisely this kind of trafficking. In May 2023, Irish authorities took part in raids and border checks across Europe to catch rings involved in forced begging and sexual exploitation. The global operation identified over 1,400 potential victims worldwide and hundreds of arrests, underscoring that this issue spans continents. In the Irish context, Operation Golden Chain, as local media called it, saw Irish police working with Romania's DICOT, Organised Crime Division. Reports mention coordinated raids in Bucharest and Dublin, where informants traced phone links between beggars in the city and controllers in Romania. One case saw a Dublin call centre used to manage logistics, flights booked through travel agencies, payments arranged through sham social welfare claims, and quick withdrawal of euros at bank machines when beggars reported back. Europol statements emphasise that criminal groups exploit the most vulnerable. Minors forced to beg or commit petty crimes, their families under threat if they refuse. In a chilling parallel, Swedish police found 5 boys with a man who claimed to be their boss while they begged, a scene reminiscent of Ireland's own Rostas network. Domestically, Garda have stepped up cooperation with Romania. Victims identified in Ireland are now more likely to be referred to Romanian consular assistance, and Romanian police can open parallel inquiries into gangs operating back home. Ireland's Justice Minister Helen McEntee has frequently met with EU counterparts to push for tougher action on trafficking. In 2024, she announced a new national referral mechanism to help agencies report trafficking suspicions quickly. Still, the prosecutor's office acknowledges how hard it is to build cases. As of mid-2023, only a handful of trafficking convictions have been secured in Ireland, often using ancillary charges rather than the human trafficking statute itself. That legal gap means many suspects continue operating until caught on other counts, like drink driving or fraud, then recycled back into the system. What is the situation now? Garda Commissioner Harris reports a surge in identified victims. In 2023, Ireland identified 53 trafficking victims, up 26% from the year before. Of these, 19% were exploited in forced labor and 14% in forced criminality, including begging. But to date, the state has only successfully prosecuted 1 trafficker under the new laws, a conviction in 2021. New legislation, the Criminal Justice Human Trafficking Bill, aims to give law enforcement more power to target recruiters and money launderers. Policing tactics have also adapted. The Garda's Human Trafficking Coordination Unit now monitors Eastern European travel patterns. There is routine checks at airports for flight groups identified in sting operations, and squads conduct visa checks. Local Garda on the beat have been told to be vigilant. Any sign of coaching or rapport between beggars may indicate an OCG, organised crime group. In January 2024, for instance, officers in the north side of Dublin moved on a ring of assertive Bulgarian or Romanian beggars near bus stops, finding hidden cell phones, empty bank envelopes, and a tangle of family relations on Facebook. Although such moves lead to only fines or fixed penalties, they do interrupt the ring's earnings cycle and sometimes uncover links to larger crimes. For example, police have discovered stolen phones and pickpocket tools in the weekly collection buckets. Meanwhile, public awareness campaigns urge citizens not to fuel the begging industry. Non-profits like Merchants K Ireland or the ISPCC advise the public to donate to registered charities rather than giving cash on the street. Garda highlighted that these criminals are masters of disguise. Women begging at midnight or itinerant children are often part of a social stereotype trap designed to make us give. In striking contrast, real Irish homeless people rarely do live busking outside ATMs at 11 p.m. The message is clear: generosity should not play into a trap. In courtrooms, a few key trials did send a message. In 2021, a woman was convicted for placing her child at risk by forcing her to beg on Dublin streets, an unprecedented use of the new child begging offence, and given a 3-year sentence. In 2022, a ring of 6 Romanian nationals was prosecuted in Cork for organising beggars across several counties. Detectives built the case on recorded conversations about quotas and GPS tracking on stolen phones. Each conviction has been hailed by justice groups, but they are exceptions. Police say many suspects disappear back to Romania once released on bail, never to return to face Irish justice. One tangible change: begging has become more mobile. After Garda crackdowns in Dublin, the Irish Central and Irish Times reports tell of planes carrying beggars to rural towns like Athlone or Sligo. A drop of a few points in Dublin theft or begging complaints in 2023 coincided with a rise in Galway and Mayo. This migratory pattern is intentional. The rings know that Irish rural Garda units are smaller and slower to act. Critically, the Romanian aspect remains central. Romanian police have openly identified patterns matching the Irish accounts. They note that Eastern European clan networks consider begging a safer racket than drug dealing or robbery in Western Europe, and so gladly dispatch entire family groups for a few weeks of work. For traffickers in Romania, Ireland offers relative anonymity and a good return. Some investigations estimate a single child beggar can bring in $50,000 to $100,000 a year for the network. With Romania itself cracking down on migrant crime gangs, there have been high-profile home raids on beggar ringleaders in Bucharest. Some bosses have tried to relocate their operations deeper into the EU, and Ireland's open borders and English language have made it a target. The Irish state and civil society are more aware of this dark trade than ever, but the battle is far from won. Every year sees new arrivals, new rings, and new victims. Garda Harris and his colleagues speak of a borderless crime that only intensifies with globalization. For now, citizens must stay vigilant. A simple act of charity on the street can inadvertently line a criminal's pockets. The extraordinary story of Romanian begging gangs in Ireland is still unfolding. It is a story of modern slavery in plain sight, of cunning exploitation of human kindness by ruthless networks. From the beggar alone on O'Connell Street, to the trafficked child in Donegal, to the high-rise boss counting cash back in Cluj, each piece of the puzzle reveals a common truth. These crimes cross borders easily, thrive in anonymity, and exploit people at society's margins. But Ireland will continue to chase them in every conference hall and courtroom. As Commissioner Harris put it, confronting this evil is about people's lives. And until those lives are truly safe, the watch must never end.